When you lose a parent, it feels like you lose everything. Everything. Hey guys. Man. For 6 years, I've tried to film this. I've literally filmed it probably 3 or 4 times. And a few of those times I tried to time it where I could film it, edit it, and get it up by February 27th every year that I tried. And every year I failed. It was a failure due to I just emotionally, mentally couldn't film it. I would stop halfway or partway or at the beginning. 6 years ago on February 27th at 8:25 in the morning, my mom and I watched my dad take his last breath. He died at home, which is what he wanted. The only thing we couldn't do for him was he didn't die in his bed, he died in a hospital bed that we had made room for in the living room. I was fortunate to have spent the last week and a half with him while he was still alive. Prior to that, for the last 2 months, the 2 months prior to his death, I came every weekend. I came home every weekend. I wasn't living at home at the time. I wanted to come home every day. And my mom said no. She wouldn't let me. She said no. She has enough to worry about right now. She doesn't need to worry about me too. Because I lived an hour and a half away. And I had no qualms about, I was broke. Like, if any of you watched my video about when I left my ex-boyfriend, I was broke. I had no friends where I was. I had nothing. I was stripped of my dignity, my emotion, my person. So I had nothing going on down there that was worth, just being there every night. I mean, I would figure out ways to buy gas to get home every night, whatever. But my mom said, no, just come on the weekend. It's fine, because then you can stay a few days and you're not tired. Let me start from the beginning. Let's make this easy. I'll start from the beginning, okay? I remember being a little kid and watching TV with my dad in the living room, or being in the car, or I'd be in the back seat, he'd be driving, or we would be outside eating ice cream in the summertime on a Saturday, and he would always just randomly come out with, one day you're gonna wake up and I'm not gonna be here, and I need you to learn everything you can learn from me now. And it was a strange thing to be told as a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, like growing up, literally, my entire, even until the time he went to the hospital for the last time, he would say things like that, and when you're little, you don't quite get it. But yeah, as a kid, my dad would just we'd be watching a show, and there would be a commercial, and he would just say, I'm trying to teach you everything I can, you need to learn. So, with that said, I learned how to play baseball. We'd be out here in the backyard. My dad would, he would throw it. I'm pretty sure he always threw it underhand. I would be batting, and I would over and over and over again, we're out here until you hit the ball. And we would watch Phillies games at night. I remember 7 p.m. in the evening, if it's p.m., it's in the evening. 7 p.m., the games would be on, we'd watch them. But we never watched the entire game. It would be, my dad would watch parts of it and then check on the score, but he'd want to watch something a little more fulfilling because sometimes the games would go nowhere. And he liked football. Believe it or not, I love the Eagles. My dad loved the Redskins. My dad was older. He was 40 when they had me. My mom was 31 when I was born. I think my dad's age, having me later, I think that's kind of what prompted him to continuously remind me that he is going to die one day. Again, it was just weird. having somebody tell you they're gonna die one day and you need to be prepared for it. Like, you need to absorb everything you can absorb from them. My dad started to get weird, and not weird where like I didn't want to spend time with him, but weird, I think, health-wise. He refused to go to the doctor for anything. I think the last time I remember him voluntarily going to the doctor is when his eardrum ruptured and it was bleeding, and he was scared because, having never gone to the doctor, you know, since he was a kid or whenever the last time he went was, he thought he was dying or something, like, because there was blood coming out of his ear. And, you know, he got everyone, I didn't know, I was too little, they didn't tell me anything, I just knew my dad had ear pains. It was, I don't know, it was the last time I remember him going to the doctor. I honestly do not remember him going to the doctor for anything else until I had graduated college. Now, my dad, I guess he told my mom this, but one of his wishes was to see me graduate college. And I remember one time we weren't arguing, we were having a disagreement, and, you know, I said, well, you know, I don't want to go to college. And my dad was like, what did you say? Like, I had cursed really badly, like said the C word or something. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think I want to go to college. I don't know. And he's like, that's not an option. That's not an option. And yes, I went to college. I went to a 4-year private university in Philadelphia. I have a photograph that I'm going to insert here of my dad and me after the ceremony. He saw me graduate college. He saw me get a new job. He saw me intern at The Onion, which was pretty cool. He was proud. Like, he supported me in everything I did. But I noticed his patience, his temper was shorter. Not with me, but just in general. He wasn't feeling good. And as time passed, like, starting in high school and just up until he died, like, we noticed there was something wrong with him. He stopped wanting to go places. I mean, he still always drove. When it got to the point that, you know, he stopped driving, then we knew there was something really wrong. But, like, he didn't trust my mom driving. These are all memories of my dad, how I remember my dad, growing up with my dad. You know, like I said, I knew he was older, like, I was aware of that, I was conscious of it, but it never bothered me. It never, like, everybody knew my dad. Everybody liked my dad. My dad was bachelor Uncle JJ up until he was 40 years old. He took care of everything in his family. He lived on the bachelor lifestyle, bachelor money, you know, did whatever he wanted, bought whatever he wanted, and then things change quick when you get married and have a second mouth to feed and find out you have a third mouth on the way. My dad did his best, from what I could remember.
2 hours later.
The actual story time is events leading up to my dad's death and then coping with it after and where I am now. Dealing with a parent's death is one of the hardest things you'll have to do in life. Especially so if you're close to them. You know, I've mentioned a few times already, I was very close to my dad, like very close to my dad. I was working at my job down the shore, and my dad had a hernia surgery in July of 2012. It was the first time he had seen a doctor since his eardrum ruptured sometime in the 90s, and at least that I know of, because I know there were things that my dad would do secretly, like my mom would know because, like, it's his wife, but they would keep things from me, I guess to protect me, and because they didn't feel like I needed to know and worry. Yeah, so I knew about the hernia because he had this bulbous sort of growth. It looked like a growth or a lump or something on his abdomen, so, you know, the doctor said, oh, it's a hernia, like, we can fix it. So he went in surgery, he got it fixed, but while they were in there, they noticed lesions on several organs and parts of his body, and they were very concerned, but they weren't there to do it then. You know, if it was cancerous, they needed to close up very quickly. So they did what they had to do, and they closed him up, and they set him up, and he went home. He had complications afterward with his urinary tract, so my mom was constantly driving him back and forth to the urologist. Catheter in, catheter out. Catheter in, catheter out. This went on for, I believe, like 2 or 3 weeks, and finally he was able to go to the bathroom on his own without the catheter. It was weird, like, and my dad was very upset. but they had tried to keep him and said, like, we found some stuff, we want to just make sure it's okay, like, you don't have to stay, but, like, we'd like you to come back. My dad got frustrated and said, no, this is exactly why I don't go to the doctors, because you do one thing, you find something else, and it's all about insurance money. Like, he was very much a conspiracy theorist. They sent him a letter to try to get him back. He threw it away. They called. He hung up on them. Like, they were very concerned, and he wasn't having it, so they left him alone. My mom told me to keep my phone on me, keep it on, keep the ringer on, because if something happens, she wants to call. Like, she had this very bad feeling, and I talked to my boss and I said, look, like, I don't keep my phone out, but there's something going on. My mom is scared. Like, is it okay if I just have it out? I'm not gonna go on it, but if my mom calls, I need to answer it. And he goes, yeah, it's fine. I totally understand, it's fine. So one day, it was in December. It was December 17th, 2012. I was at work. I had just gotten home from being home. My mom kicked me out Sunday night, as she did every weekend I was there. I was working on cutting vinyl for someone's athletic shirt, some jersey or something. And I remember I sat at my desk, I set up the file, and I was like, alright, cool. And I got up and I walked around to the front of the plotter. And I was like, oh, well, duh, like, you can't cut something if you don't send it. So I go back around, I go to sit at my desk to send the file, and my phone rings. And it's my mom. It's 3:30 in the afternoon. My heart sank a little bit because my mom knows not to call me until after 5 p.m. So I answered it, and my mom's on the line sobbing. She said they took him to the hospital. And I said, wait, took who to the hospital? And she said, Daddy's going to the emergency room. And I said, what happened? And she said he fell down the stairs. My first thought was he fell down the stairs and broke his neck. So, I asked my mom, I said, what hospital are they going to? Like, I'm leaving right now. And she said, I don't know. And I said, Mom, I can't meet you guys there if I don't know where he's going. Like, you must know something. And she goes, oh, he's going to Kennedy. So I'm like, okay, I'm leaving now. She didn't want to hang up, but I was like, Mom, like, I can't talk to you and drive at the same time. I have to go. So I was able to hang up with her, and I grabbed my wallet, my keys, and I flew out of there. My boss was out in the front of the store with a buddy of his. They were shooting the breeze, and I said, Jack, I gotta go. Like, my dad fell down the stairs. He's going to the ER. And he was like, call me later. So I got in my car, and as I mentioned earlier, I lived an hour and a half away from home. The hospital was like 15 minutes west. I got to the hospital in 45 minutes. I, not proudly, and this is very unsafe, but I got to the hospital in 45 minutes because I did 100 miles an hour the entire way on the highway. Like, I didn't even take the back roads because I knew I would be pulled over faster on back roads than I would be if I were on the highway. So I took the Garden State Parkway to the Atlantic City Expressway, and I flew down the highway. I get there, park the car, I go inside, and I tell the guard what I'm looking for, and they point me to these little, they're not even rooms, they're like areas that are divided by curtains. They call them satellite rooms. I carefully peek in first because I always feel weird, like, I don't want to rip the curtain open and it's not the right space because that would be really awkward. So I peeked in, I saw them in there, so like I pushed the curtain back a little bit and slid in. My dad's laughing when I slide in. He's in the hospital, he's in a gurney, laughing. My mom is sobbing in the corner, and he looks up and he goes, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I pointed to my mom, I was like, well, she called me. And he looked at my mom and he's like, Jen, I told you not to call her. Don't bother her at work. It's fine. And I'm like, what is even going on right now? And he was like, oh, I lost my balance and fell, but I'm fine. And I was like, are you sure? Because she's not fine. He's like, I'm fine. And he looks at my mom and he goes, I can't believe you did this. Now we have to pay her for the hours she lost from work. Like, we have to. You know, she left work early. And I was like, Dad, it's fine. Like, it was the end of the day. I don't make that much anyway, so it's fine.
It's fine.
You know, he was insistent for another couple of seconds, and I was like, okay, so like, but what happened? And he said, I don't know, I was coming up the stairs and I fell backwards. And I'm like, how does that even happen? Like, we had no idea. To backtrack though, that November, my mom got scared again. Like, the thing was, every night after work, my dad would call me. He would talk to me for maybe 15 minutes and be like, oh, your mother wants to talk to you here. Because my dad didn't like talking on the phone, but like, he wanted to talk to me. So then he would pass my mom the phone, and my mom would like go into another room and be like, I had to go into another room so your daddy doesn't hear. And I'm like, and then she told me the one time that she noticed he was dragging his leg. Like, he wasn't walking properly and he couldn't pick up his leg. And she thought it was weird. And because I hadn't been there, I did come home that one weekend and I noticed that, yes, he was dragging his left leg. I thought it was strange. I didn't say anything at first, but coincidentally, my dad told my mom that he wanted to see the doctor about his bum leg. His suddenly bum leg. And the day that he was rushed to the ER was the day he was supposed to go to the doctor. What had happened that day is that my mom came home from work, you know, the night before, telling him, I'm done at this time, your appointment is at this time, please be ready when I get home. We'll go right away. So she gets home and there's no one in the kitchen. No one's in the living room. No one's in the bathroom. And she notices that the dog is upstairs, peeking down at her from the top of the stairwell. And the only time Midnight would run upstairs by himself and look at you from the top of the stairwell was when he was scared. You know, whether he was in trouble or storms or whatever, that's it. So my mom thought it was odd that Midnight was upstairs, nobody was in the house, but the car was home. So she thought, oh, maybe he's outside and I didn't see him. Even though she told him, like, don't, like, you can take the dog out, but don't do anything else. So she goes outside, he's not in the yard, you know, he's not hiding, smoking a cigarette anywhere. Literally, she looked everywhere in the house again, and then she noticed that the basement door was shut. She didn't check the basement because my dad always had a habit of, when he was in the basement, he would leave the door open. The door on the stair side doesn't quite have a handle on it to open the door, so if the door shuts on you, you better figure it out. She thought it was strange, but she opened the door and screamed immediately because my dad was wedged at the bottom of the stairs between the concrete wall and the bottom stair. He was banged up, scratched, you know, had blood. My mom ran down the stairs and noticed, you know, she was checking to see if he was okay. He said he was fine, but that he thinks he needs to go to the hospital. She noticed the blood that was on the scrapes and scratches were dried. She asked him, how long have you been down here? And he said only a few minutes. And my mom knew that was not the truth because all the blood was dried. Like, he was scabbed up and everything. So my mom calls 911, they come and get him, and that's when she called me. The nurse or tech or whoever it was that came said that they did x-rays. The x-rays look fine, there's nothing broken, he's just scratched up, and that he's good to go. Like, they didn't find anything weird, so let's go. So we agreed that my dad would leave with me in my car because my car was lower to the ground and roomier and just easier for him to get into. I took my dad home. My mom made a pit stop. She went to get ice. My dad says, I need to use the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, like, you know, that's fine. So I help him up the stairs. I open the door. He goes, before he walks in, he goes, hey, your headlights are still on. I'm like, oh, don't worry, it's automatic, it's fine. So I let him in, I turn around, I lock the car with the button. I hear him yell out midnight, which is our dog, and a huge thud. I run inside the house. The lights are off, it's kind of dark in there. I see my dad on the floor, so I don't step on him. I thought he tripped over the dog. So I start screaming at the dog to get out of the room, like, go away, go. And I regret that because the dog didn't do anything. The dog was happy to see him. I flip on the light, my dad's on the floor, and I'm like, all right, okay, we'll figure this out. He's like, I can't get up. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna help you get up. He failed to tell me that his entire left side was paralyzed, that he couldn't move it. He just said he couldn't get up, So I'm trying to help him up and not realizing he's not really helping me because he can't. And then he goes, I need to use the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna get you up, you can go to the bathroom. No problem. He can't push himself up. I can't pick him up. So then we start trying to brainstorm really quick. He's like, oh, I know, here, give me the chair. I can use the chair to get myself up. And I'm like, okay. And it's starting to, dawn on me that there's something very, very wrong. It didn't register right away that he wasn't moving his left side. Because his right leg, his right arm was moving. He was moving his head and everything. He was mostly mobile as far as, his limbs on one side. My mom comes walking in the door and she sees him on the floor and I'm like, Mom, he fell again. I can't get him up. My mom takes the ice and cups of ice, not even a bag of ice, cups of ice from Wawa. And she throws them on the counter and we're both short women trying to pick this dude up and he starts whining. And I'm not saying that as a complaint. I'm saying he starts whining because he needs to use the bathroom. And he's like, I really gotta go. I'm not gonna make it. And we're trying. We're gonna do this as quick as possible. Don't worry. And then he soiled himself and was very embarrassed. I said, Daddy, it's okay. We'll fix it. We'll figure it out. So my mom starts pulling off his pants to clean him up. I'm calling 911 because at this point we realized that he can't move. And they came pretty quickly. I remember I ran outside because I saw the ambulance. I ran outside around the house and I flagged them down. Once they come, they take him out, whatever. My mom has him all cleaned up. He's embarrassed. And we go back to the hospital. Mom and I took one car this time. I drove. We went back to the same hospital. They were puzzled. They're like, why are you back? And they said, well, I guess he told me, he's like, well, I can't move my left anything. And they're like, oh, we should probably do a CAT scan. It boggles my mind why they didn't do it the first time. They did x-rays. But I don't know if I wasn't there when he went in. I don't know if they asked him questions about balance or anything. Probably not. But they didn't do it the first time, they did it the second time. Well, we are waiting in this light room again, and the nurse or doctor came out and said, we have to transfer you. Did a CAT scan of your brain, and there's a mass in there. We don't know what it is, but we're not equipped to deal with it, so we need to send you to the other location. My mom and I looked at each other like, wonderful. She's a wreck. My dad was like, oh, okay, kind of going with it, because I think he's still trying to process the fact they just told him he has a brain tumor. I have a photograph that's framed downstairs of the last picture I took with my dad. It was a selfie. It was when they were preparing to pack him up and take him to the other campus. You can tell in that photograph he's very sick. Very, very sick. And we went to this other hospital. They admitted him. I want to say he was in... I can't remember if I think they put him in ICU first. He was in the ICU first. The funniest part of this whole thing was my dad, growing up also, he told me that should anything happen, he is insistent on a DNR. When they admitted him to the hospital, they asked him, you know, in the event of a situation where we put you on breathing machines, life support, is that something you would like? And I looked at him because he, again, fully capable of answering, and he looked at me and he's like, I don't know, I'm gonna let them make the decision. And I looked at him and I said, no, I think you need to make this decision. You have wishes for this. And he turned around and said, yes, keep me alive. And I looked at my mom and I'm like, that was different. And that was the point where we knew my dad was scared. He was actually scared of death. Regardless of him constantly telling me that he's gonna die one day and that he's lived a good life and he's not afraid to die and he's ready whenever the Lord is ready to take him home. The neurologist was there. We talked with the neurologist like immediately. He explained, he had looked at his chart, his x-rays, his CAT scan, and said that, they can go in, do it as in, take out the mass. He said it's a very dangerous procedure because it is on the brain. One slip of an instrument, and if you nick portions of the brain, you can damage it. So risky, of course, doctor has to be careful. 6-hour procedure, and we scheduled it. That was Monday night. We scheduled it, I believe, for Wednesday. It might have been for Tuesday. I can't remember. I just remember it was scheduled like immediately. We let people know. I text family. At the time I had a Facebook. I was using Facebook as a vehicle because we have so much family that it was just... I don't like using Facebook to notify people of things, but it was just at the time I didn't have time to sit there and call everybody one by one, send text messages, whatever. The day of the surgery, now my mom had been crying pretty much every day, and I was trying to tell myself that it wasn't time yet. But I was trying to hold it together for my mom. Like, one of us needed to be strong. I don't have siblings. Any close family that I have, they're close, but they're not that close. They have their own thing going on. I couldn't control myself when they came to wheel my dad out to go to surgery. I tried to hold it in, and I couldn't. And I burst into tears. And my dad said, please don't cry, you're gonna make me cry. And he said, don't worry, I'll be fine, I'll see you in a little bit. And I hugged him and I kissed him, and that was the last time that I hugged and kissed him while he was alive. I grew up in a family that wasn't very affectionate. And I don't say that as a negative thing. I say that as like, it was understood, like my parents would say I love you when I was little. I remember, I love you, and I had this thing with my dad. It was my dad, I would call him at work. I would bother him at work a lot as a kid. I love my dad, I wanted to talk to him. Or if I thought my mom was being awful, like I would call him at work and say, like, mommy's hitting me, he would try to calm me down and say, like, what did you do? Like, why is mommy hitting you? Mommy doesn't hit you just because. Like, what did you do? What happened? And, he would say, I'll be home later. Just stay out of mommy's radar type of thing. Like, go play or something. Go watch TV. Go just stay out of mommy's hair. And, he would do this thing where he would say, I love you. And I would say, I love you. And he goes, but I love you more. And I would say, I love you more. And he goes, I love you more than more. And it would continue for like 2 minutes. So I hugged and I kissed him when they wheeled him out. It was a long 8 hours. It took 2 hours to prep and then 6 hours for the actual procedure. My mom told her family while we were in the waiting room, like, please don't call. Like, we're going to try to sleep. we're waiting, like we don't know anything yet, just like don't call, we'll let you know. And the whole day my mom's phone was blowing up. People were calling her. They were getting mad, like, why aren't you answering? And my mom's like, I'm first of all trying to sleep, secondly I'm in the waiting room, I don't know anything, he just went in, like he's not even in surgery yet. Luckily the people I had reached out to were respectful enough to grant me my wish and like didn't blow up my phone. But I was having conversations with a few people through text. The surgery was successful. I'm sorry if I made it sound like, when I said I hugged and kissed him for the last time, it wasn't, it really was the last time ever, because like I said, we weren't an affectionate family. I didn't hug and kiss him again until he died. And do I regret that? No, because he knew I loved him. I knew he loved me. We don't need to touch. We don't need to be affectionate. Like, that's the way I grew up, and that's fine. He actually had a lot of visitors while he was in the hospital. It's the weirdest thing that tragedy brings people together. Like,
a few moments later.
December 25th, Christmas. They said my dad was... Let me backtrack, because I skipped a lot of important things. The surgery was no guarantee that my dad would regain his motor movement in his left side, but they were able to successfully remove all of the mass. They sent it to the lab for testing, so we waited. In the meanwhile, they had my dad begin physical therapy. Light stuff, because he still couldn't move his left side. I remember coming in one morning, because we went every morning. I did not go back to work. I had called my boss and I said, my dad has been admitted. He has a brain tumor. He's paralyzed on one side. I'm gonna stay here. And my boss said, no problem. Let me know. Luckily it was off season, so it wasn't busy. It wasn't summer. No, barely anybody came in. He could handle design work and stuff himself. We came in one morning and my dad was like, where's your mother? And I'm like, she's right here. And she walked in, and when he was in the ICU, we had to wear, I believe did we need gloves? I don't think we needed gloves. I think they want us to wear gloves. We didn't wear gloves. We had to wear like these gowns. My dad they were afraid he was at risk or had, I can't remember. This illness was such a big deal for a while, like years ago. It was, MRSA, not MRSA, but it was like around the same time as like the big MRSA outbreak. I can't remember. I can't remember if it was like we had to wear masks too, because I think it was like, it's like airborne. So they were afraid that he might have that, and they didn't want visitors to like catch anything. We came in, we put stuff down, because the gowns and the masks had to go on first. We had to get dressed outside of the room before we can go in. So he's like, where's your mom? I was like, she's here. And he was sitting up in a chair, because he would get tired in the bed, and then they'd move him to a chair, and he'd get tired in the chair and back to the bed. So he was in the chair this time. And he's like, Chin, come here, I gotta show you something. He was very excited, and I stood there and I'm like, what's going on? And so my mom goes over to him and he goes, grab my hand, and he reached up with his left hand. He could move his left side. He reached up with his left hand and held my mom's hand, and we started crying. What happened was the tumor here, where, wait, hold on. So this, I don't know if I have pictures of this, but like when they did the surgery, they cut him from ear to ear. So they cut him here all the way up and over. It's gonna be very gross, so if you're squeamish and you don't like medical stuff, mute or don't watch the rest of this. But they sliced like literally from ear to ear, and they flapped forward his face, and they flapped back that skin, and they cut the bone. They had to cut out the bone so they could get to the mass. They were able to get it out. I don't know how any of this stuff. I think they put the bone back, and they flapped everything back up, sewed them together, and he was good. So he literally had no hair from like the top of his head. Oh, I forgot something important again. So when he came out of surgery and he woke up, The doctor came and got us and said, oh, he's out of surgery, he's awake and talking. And I was like, wait, what, already? He asked for a donut and coffee, and I'm like, God. So we went in the room, he said he wanted a Boston cream and a coffee. My mom went to the Wawa down the street, got him one, brought it back. So every morning we went there, we got him a coffee and a Boston cream. Taking out the tumor affected his memory a little bit, I think, because the brain was trying to not reset itself, but sort of settle back in now that it has space to be. So little cute things would happen. Like my mom bought him 2 donuts because I think there was a sale on donuts or something. So he ate a donut and then he left a donut bag on his legs. You know, forgot that it was there, even though it's right in front of him. And then at one point notices the bag and he was like, what's this? And he opens it, he's like, a donut! Like he was so excited. But yeah, so he regained the movement in his left side and he began a more rigorous physical therapy where they were having him walk. Now he had to relearn how to walk and everything and use a walker, and he did very well in physical therapy. So Christmas Day, he had been moved from, a few days prior, he'd been moved from the ICU to another room, so it was an upgrade. Christmas Day, they said, we're ready to move you out. Now, the test results came back for the tumor. Before that even, the neurologist had pulled my mom and me aside and said, look, he's like, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's probably cancer. Just based on what I can see and everything, he's like, it's probably cancer, but we don't know that for sure. We're definitely gonna test it and find out. And it was indeed cancer. It was metastatic, which means it didn't originate in the brain. It meant that there was cancer elsewhere, and the origin point was somewhere else in his body. The cancer has spread. So we knew this. My dad didn't know this yet. Brought an oncologist in. The oncologist was pushy. They wanted to do treatment. I think my dad did a total of 1. They wanted to do radiation first, I think, because they did the surgery. They wanted to make sure they killed remaining cells that had been possibly left behind. They just wanted to make sure, and then the chemotherapy would happen. Which usually it's chemotherapy first and then radiation to kill off whatever the chemo may have missed, the traces. So my dad did a total of 1 radiation therapy, 1 or 2, before my mom said stop the treatment. They were pushing for him to do chemo, and we had the oncologist pushing for it, and then there was another doctor saying he doesn't weigh enough. The chemo will kill him before the cancer does. My mom, having been through chemo, knew what it felt like. So she asked the oncologist, how much time do I get with him if we do the chemo? I know what chemo does to you. I know how sick it makes you feel. I know that you lose your hair and you can't eat anything and you're sick all the time. How much time do I get with him if he does chemo? If you can promise me another year, we can try it. The doctor said she couldn't guarantee a year. She said at best probably 6 months. At best. His cancer had spread so far because they figured out the origin point was his colon. The cancer had shot straight up his body, and that's why when he had the hernia surgery, they saw those lesions. They were cancer cells. They were just all over. Riddled his body. It was like somebody took a machine gun and just pumped all the ammo into him. That's what it looked like. It was in his lungs. It was in his stomach, on his intestines. It was everywhere. His liver, his kidney, just everything had cancer. So it would take a lot of chemo, a lot of radiation, and yeah, chemo can kill you. It destroys your immune system. You can have visitors, but you can't go out in public. And visitors, you need to limit it. You can have maybe 1 at a time because you don't know what the outside is bringing in. If you have to go in public, doctor's appointments and stuff, they encourage you to wear a mask. You lose your hair because your body is too busy helping in this battle that it's not allowing nutrients and stuff to go to things like hair and nails. Your nails turn black and fall off. Your taste buds disappear because you're so sick and the medicine is literally fighting this huge battle. And so it's all hands on deck. So things that aren't important at the moment, your taste buds, your smells, you become very sensitive to smells. Everything makes you nauseated. You can't sit up, you can't lay down, you can't walk, you're dizzy. Chemo is serious business. And my dad was like a bag of bones, you know? I mean, he was thin. I think the thinnest he was when he died. Watching that deterioration process happen was crazy. I had at this point gone back to work because my dad was in the hospital. My mom didn't, surgery was over. My mom didn't really find it necessary for me to be here and not be able to earn my living, because I still had to pay rent even though I wasn't there all the time. Like, my landlord knew at this point, my boss knew what was going on, and my boyfriend. So, like, important key people in my life knew what was going on. My friends didn't all know. I didn't tell all of them yet because I was still processing it. I mean, they knew because I was, like I said, I used Facebook as a correspondence tool, so things were public to them. My dad was told he had cancer. When the radiation doctor walked in, my dad was like, "Hey, like, what are you doing here?" Kind of puzzled as to why this guy. And they were talking, and they're like, "Well, James, you have cancer." My dad didn't believe it. I think one of the other doctors tried to tell him that, and he was like, "F out of here, like, I don't have cancer, whatever. Y'all just want insurance money," like that thing again. But when the radiation doctor came in, who my dad had a very good relationship with from when he would take my mom to, like, some of her treatments and whatever, he knew this doctor. I can't remember the doctor's name. That's why I'm not saying it. It's not that I'm not keeping it a secret. I just don't remember this person's name. When he said, "James, you have cancer," that's when it hit my dad, like, shit, I really have cancer. My dad told my mom, "Don't tell Michelle." I already knew, because the doctors told us. Christmas Day, I was at the hospital. My mom made a meal. She made Christmas dinner that morning. And so we were a little late going to the hospital because we needed to finish cooking. We had ham, we had mashed potatoes, and I think we had green beans. Like, my mom tried to keep it simple. Oh, we had stuffing too. So it had 4 parts to it. It was our usual Christmas dinner. And we ate Christmas dinner at lunchtime because they were ready to send him to the next hospital. He was going to a rehabilitation hospital. It was decided that he would not be receiving any more treatment. My dad was in on this conversation, but he deferred to my mom, and he told him, like, my mom would be making the decisions, even though he was aware and fully capable. My dad was getting antsy Christmas Day, getting cranky, like, "I want to go, I want to leave, I want to go home." We couldn't take him home just yet. He had to go to rehab to learn how to walk again. So later that afternoon, they packed him up. We followed the ambulance to this rehab hospital, which was even further. So he moved there, and I'm gonna tell you the name of the hospital because I was very dissatisfied with everything there, from the food to the service. Like, it was terrible. Marlton Rehab in Marlton, New Jersey. Terrible service. Like, I saw things there with other patients that I need to make a separate video about, like, my experiences in these 2 hospitals, because I had security called on me at one, and the other one, like, I was ready to throw some punches. I was ready to punch a hoe. I remember going there, like, my mom worked Saturdays, and so I would come with my mom Friday night. No, I'm sorry. I would meet my parents there on Friday night, and I would, we would stay until it was time to leave. The next morning, I would come first thing in the morning. I'd wake up, get ready, get dressed, and go. My mom was at work, so, we couldn't go together. And I would bring stuff with me. I would stop and get donuts or, like, something else. Yeah, I would bring whatever it was that my mom had packed for my dad or made for my dad the night before. Or, she would give me a little list of things to bring for my dad, stop at a store and get, and I would do that. And I would sit with him and I would read him stories on my phone, like news stories and stuff, because we found that his vision was going. So we couldn't really see. He couldn't see well to begin with. He was blind in one eye for the most part. But what vision he did have was deteriorating. He had moments where, and this is due to the brain surgery, because having known my dad for 24 years, he was a very calm man, never really raised his voice. He was cranky sometimes, but that's because he wasn't feeling good. There were some good things, good conversations, and that was actually when it was just my dad and me. That's when I was having conversations with him about, like, my apartment situation. He was in that hospital for like 2 to 3 weeks. Because collectively, he was in a hospital for a month. These people were not good to my dad, and my dad started having symptoms related to the brain surgery, things that, like, we can't control. One night, my mom was there, and my dad said he was cold. He started shivering, even though he was under blankets. So she went, each room had a closet, so she went in the closet and found like extra blankets, and she put them on, and she said he started like turning blue and literally just shivering so much, like uncontrollably. And she didn't know what to do, so she ran out to the nurse's station and tried to ask for more blankets, and she was stealing them off of, like, I think the person next to my dad was gone, so she was stealing blankets off that bed, and he just wouldn't get warm, and she was afraid that, like, he was gonna die that way, and, like, they just took so long to get there with anything, and like eventually he turned back to a normal color and was fine. She was traumatized by that. Like, that was scary for her. He had bad days in this hospital, and I think it was based on the way he was treated. I remember coming in some days, and because he hadn't shaved, like, he looked so disheveled. It looked like he was homeless. Skinny, dirty. My mom would try to clean him a little bit. He couldn't bathe because he couldn't walk on his own. And that's what the physical therapy was for, to get him to walk on his own. Like, they taught him how to climb stairs and how to, walk in a straight line. And the problem is, it's all in a controlled environment. When you go out into the free world, you go outside of your house, you go walking down the street, it's not even pavement. There's debris on the ground, there's grass and dirt, and the dirt is in mounds, and the grass are in clumps, and like nothing is flat. But he was doing well. He was doing well in physical therapy. They spoke highly of him, saying he did well. January 17th, he came home. A month had gone by the time he was released from the hospital period, like he was going home. Every day for that month, the dog was looking for my dad. He knew what times of the day my dad would come home from work, usually. And when he didn't come home from work, he just sat by the door and waited and waited and waited. Finally, it was time for my dad to go home, and my dad was excited, and it was a Sunday, and he says to me, "Will you take me home tomorrow?" Like, he looked at me and said, "Will you take me home tomorrow?" And I said, "Absolutely. Anything you want. Anything you want. I'll do it." I stepped down to the hall, and I called my boss, and I said, "Hey, I'm not coming in tomorrow. My dad's coming home from the hospital, and he asked me to bring him home." And I said, "Yes." And my boss was like, "Yeah, no problem. I'll see you when you come in." That Monday came, and again, like, we were thinking we would leave early. My dad was cranky that day. He was so cranky because he knew he was going home, but they had to file papers, and they had to make sure everything was good, and they needed to get the discharge instructions, and it was all of this stuff, and it literally took hours. We didn't leave until like the afternoon. My dad would come home with me in my car because it was lower and easier to get into. So at this point, my dad had a catheter in. He wasn't comfortable trying to use the restroom on his own. Couldn't walk well or anything, so it was just easier to have a catheter, and that was his. Finally, we get to leave. Took him home, had all the papers and everything. Get in the car, make sure he's in there. So I get home, and I usually pull in nose first. Like, I just drive into the driveway. This time, because I knew, like, my dad had difficulty, I took my mom's parking spot, and not only that, I backed into the space, so the passenger side was at the stairs, and we have stairs leading up to the door of the house. And I jumped out of the car first, ran around to the other side, opened the door to help my dad out, and I said, "Okay, like, here we go. We're gonna use everything you learned in physical therapy. We're gonna use it here." I don't know what the problem was. I don't know if I could have done something more, but my dad gets, one leg out, spins his body, grips the door frame. I'm holding the door steady so it doesn't like swing on him, and he manages to get himself up, but then he can't stand up, right? So he reaches out and like is almost cowering, and he puts his hand on the steps, and he puts one leg on the step, and he's trying to pull himself up, and he can't do it. And I'm trying to encourage him, like, come on, like, do you need help? Like, is there anything you can do? Like, you can do this. It's everything you learn. Like, don't forget. And he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And that was not my dad. That was not my dad. He had always told me, there's no such thing as can't. You can. You put your mind to it, you can do it. He said, I can't do it, and I didn't know what to do. My mom wasn't home yet. Like, she had stopped for ice, and she pulls in the driveway, and I'm like waving at her. And I'm like, I can't get him up the stairs, and she's like, okay, we'll do it together. So we try to get him up the stairs, and he won't budge. Like, he can't. it's like he wants to and he can't. He can't pick up his leg. And he wasn't paralyzed. It's just he couldn't physically do it. It was too much. My mom said, see if Ray is home. Like, go get Ray. And so I ran, literally, it was like Forrest Gump. I ran out of my driveway. I turned, was running down the middle of the street, not even on the sidewalk, just down the middle of the street. And I get to a childhood friend's house. And this woman, her mom, total angel. Her and her husband, complete angels. I banged on the door and she opens. I was like, hi, Mrs. Burr, is your husband home? And she said, no, what's wrong? I said, my dad's home from the hospital. We can't get him in the house. And she's like, well, I can try to help. And so she leaves her house. We walk to my house and, like my mom's out there and everything. So the three of us are trying to get my dad up the stairs. We can't do it. My dad at this point is like on his knees, putting all of his weight on these stairs, like leaning on these stairs, like he's about to have a heart attack and fall over. We called the police. We didn't call 911, we called the police station and said, hey, like, we need help. And so an officer showed up and actually two of them showed up and they're like, okay, do you have a chair? And I looked at the guy, I'm like, what? Like, do you have a chair? So we brought out a chair, and what they did was they were able to pick my dad up enough because he had enough strength that he could kind of help them. And so they got him up the stairs, and we put the chair on the landing. They turned him around, sat him in the chair, and lifted the chair up and carried my dad into the house and put him on the sofa. Now, we didn't have a hospital bed for him yet because my dad insisted he was fine and didn't need one. He was going to be better, he was going to go home, the nurse was coming to help him. That was the other thing too. My dad wasn't aware that he was placed on immediate hospice once he was discharged. Like, once he was discharged, he was now under hospice care. He had no idea. He thought it was a physical therapy nurse coming to work with him with his legs to strengthen him up. We didn't have the heart to tell him that he was going to die. We didn't know how. It's not that we, you don't want to tell somebody they're going to die, and we certainly didn't know how. The caseworker took care of that for us when she very blatantly asked during her first visit if funeral plans had been arranged. So that was the announcement to my dad. But yeah, so they got him in, they put him on the sofa, and my dad was okay for a little bit. Like, the nice thing about hospice is that they provide you with all the equipment that you need. Wheelchairs, walkers, canes, shower benches, commodes, oxygen tanks, cannulas, other supplies you might need. You just tell them what you need, they bring it to you. Now, insurance covers this for the most part. Fortunately, my dad had a supplemental insurance that he had been paying into. Like, my dad was a sucker for gimmicks, but this one was actually kind of nice because it worked out. We ended up not having to pay a penny after we got the bills months later, which were very, very high. I don't even know where these bills are, but they were like, I want to say it was like $100,000 altogether, but anyway, my dad was pretty okay for a while. He wasn't great. He wasn't the dad that I remember before he fell down the stairs. But he still got up early in the morning and he was able to use enough energy and strength to get himself into the wheelchair, and then he would wheel himself into the kitchen and make coffee. And my mom was terrified of the idea of him making coffee because she was afraid that if he wasn't strong enough to hold the kettle, he would drop it and burn himself, and then we'd have to go back to the hospital. Fortunately he didn't, but it did get to a point where he couldn't make his own coffee. He weakened pretty quickly. But I need to, there's other pictures I want to put in here to show you of, the next 6 weeks, the last 6 weeks we had with my dad when he came home were interesting. From an outside perspective, it was super interesting. The way the human body works scientifically, oh my god, the way it is literally we live and we're conscious and we're aware and we do things, but the body on its own is, your skin is your largest organ, and you have all these little organs inside and they all work collectively.
2 hours later.
And the brain is the control center of everything, and it's while you're living, your body is living.
A few moments later.
And I know that sounds weird and kind of dumb, but my dad, for a while, was able to take himself to the restroom to use the restroom, but then he actually asked for a catheter because he said he just couldn't do it. He didn't have the energy to actually go to the bathroom by himself. He couldn't shower. because he couldn't stand. Again, he wasn't paralyzed, he was just very weak. He took one shower in the 6 weeks that he was home, and that was because the nurse that came every day, I'll never forget her. Her name was Leslie. Strong, wonderful, nice. Leslie had taken my dad into the shower to give him a shower. And because his balance was off, again, from the brain surgery, they warned us that there would be things that happen because of the brain surgery. Like, the brain is a very fragile part of your body. You know, they didn't nick anything. It's just, I think the brain was trying to recover from having that pressure on it and everything. But he had slipped in the shower, or he thought he slipped. Like, she had him, she was holding on to him, whatever, but his foot must have slipped or something, and he felt like he was falling, and it was traumatic enough for him to say, I'm never getting in the shower again. I'm never doing it again. And he didn't. The nurse could not force him. So he got sponge baths in the sofa. And that was the other thing too. I think a week into it, we ended up ordering a hospital bed because the sofa wasn't working out. At least with the hospital bed, we could move it up and down. You know, he could be comfortable. He could sit up if he wanted to. He could lay down. You can't do that with a couch unless you have one of those electronic recliners. But even then, it's not, the hospital bed isn't comfortable either, but you can make it comfy, like it moves. So we ended up getting a hospital bed. But I remember the last couple of days that he stayed on the couch. I was home with him one weekend, and he says to me, I haven't shaved in a long time. I need to shave. And I was like, okay, do you want me to shave? He was like, no, I can do it. Can you get me? And he started rattling off all the things he needed. He needed a bowl of warm water. He needed his rag. My dad always used rags in the shower. And he also used them when he shaved, and he used the same rag. I don't want to know. But bowl of water, rag, his razor, his shaving cream. Always use Barbasol, the foaming kind, not gel. The gel foams anyway, right? But the regular, original foaming kind, no scents or anything. And a mirror. Now, luckily, my parents knew at this point in my life that I loved makeup, so I had mirrors and stuff, like mirrors that you would hold. Yeah, luckily, I knew where it was, so he had the mirror that you can hold, and he had his razor. My dad couldn't see that well. His motor skills in his left side were back, but they weren't perfect, and his motor skills in general had taken a dip, too. So, I set everything up. We have those, TV dinner tables. I have no idea what they're called. Dinner trays or something? Like the foldable tables. So I set one of those up for him. This was before we brought the hospital-style tables that go over the beds. I got him his bowl of water, I got him his rag, a razor, and the shaving cream. And I said, Daddy, do you want me to do this for you? And he said, nope, I got it. Thank you. He's like, I got everything I need. So I didn't record him, and I kind of wish I did. But I didn't want to embarrass him because, I know he was already humiliated a few times at home and then, in the hospital, so I didn't want to do that. But I did take a couple of pictures, which I'm going to try to, hopefully, if I put them in, they're going to be here in front of the pink dog. And I remember watching him and just smiling. He did the one side. No, he did his whole face. He did his whole face, right? And he wipes it all clean and everything, cleans off his razor and the bowl of water, and he looks at me and he goes, well, how did I do? Now he's looking in the mirror, so this is a very good indicator that he could not see what he was doing. He could probably see, I don't know what he could see. My guess is that he probably saw enough, he could see from afar, he could probably see shapes and light and color and make things out based on their shapely appearance, and then as things got closer he could probably make them out a little bit better. But he goes, how do I look? How did I do? And I burst out laughing and I said, Daddy, I think you missed a spot. And he was like, oh, can you get it? And I was like, yeah. So his face was patchy. It looked like he didn't really do much. So I put shaving cream back on him, and I started to shave him, and I got him clean shaven. And the crazy part of all that is that I don't think his facial hair grew back after we shaved it, because he passed 4.5 weeks later, and I don't remember him having facial hair. So, another thing he tried to do while on the couch was, I'll call it a pastime, because at first my dad was like, I don't want to do this is dumb. And over the years, because he was doing it so much, he took it on as his own little hobby. And this is the coupon clipping. So my dad was like, you know what? I want to cut some coupons. So I got him the coupons that my mom had collected that needed to be clipped, and I brought them over with the recycling bag. My dad was huge on recycling, mainly because we can get fined if we don't recycle, but like, anyway, he was very good with it. So I got him a recycling bag, the coupons, and then I gave him a little pair of scissors. And he said, what the hell? He's like, give me my big pair of scissors. Now these big pair of scissors, these were some serious scissors. They were about a foot long, maybe 13 inches, and they were not aluminum. They were heavy. They were probably, they had to have been like some kind of Chinese steel or like aluminum or something, because they were heavy. If they were steel, you wouldn't be able to use them. They'd be way too heavy. But these big metal scissors where the handles had been dipped in black paint, and they were we still have them. I don't know, they were in my car the last time I looked, but I'm pretty sure I took them out. I have no idea where they are, but they're huge and they're amazing. So he's like, I want those, and I'm like, okay. Now watching my dad with stuff, I could see he was getting weak. He couldn't really carry things. So I said, all right, I'll get them. Handed him his scissors, and he's like, oh man, these are really heavy. And so I think he cut maybe like 4 coupons, and he's like, I'm so tired. He's like, I can't do this. It was funny because he was clipping these coupons, and he had paper clippings just all over him, like he was wearing it. And so I helped him clean up. He wanted to lay back down. He laid back down. One of the days before we moved him to his hospital bed, we had gotten a basket. My mom had gotten a basket from Wawa, from Red Roof, which is the corporate portion of Wawa. The basket was filled with goodies, like all these candies and stuff, and it was a really nice basket. I wish I had taken a picture of it, but I didn't. So I said to my dad, because I was home with him, I was like, Dad, there's a basket in here. Do you want to check it out? And he was like, yeah. He's like, let's open it. Maybe we can eat some of it. And so it was a sin because he still had somewhat of an appetite, but his taste buds were still wonky, and like he couldn't swallow, he couldn't chew. We didn't learn this until we were eating the candy. So I bring in this huge basket. It's like this big. And we had set up the TV dinner table. We left it there for him, so things he needed, his cell phone, his glasses, the remote, things, his coffee, water, a clementine, all there for him. So I brought this basket in. He's like, oh, like, let's move this stuff. So I can move some of his stuff out of the way, and I put the basket down. And he's like, oh, neat. This is like really cool. I think I like some of the stuff in here. So he sat up a little bit, and I gently put the basket like on his flap. And we opened it like I sat on the edge of the couch and we opened it together. And I was like, oh, and like we laid all the candy out, put the basket away. And he wanted, I believe they were, I want to say Boston baked beans. And so I gave him a couple, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. My dad couldn't chew, and he couldn't figure out how to swallow, so he started to choke on the candy. So I had to like reach in his mouth and like pull it out. He couldn't, and I felt so bad. I felt like an asshole because I didn't know, and he didn't know, and so I was like, I could have killed my dad just now. Like, oh my god. So I was like, okay, I'm so sorry, Daddy. He's like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, I didn't know, and so I put all the candy away. I didn't even eat any. I didn't eat any with him or in front of him. I just put it all in the kitchen. I would try to cook for him, things that he wanted to eat. It was weird because like he wanted to eat, but he didn't want to eat. But I remember like he would want something that I'd have to go out for, and I'd be like, okay, well, we're gonna have to wait till Mommy gets home because I can't, like, there's no one here, it's just you. And he'd be like, oh, I'm fine, you can step out. It's like, I was like, nah, it's okay, Mommy will be home like shortly. And at this point, my dad's memory was not very good. It was good enough that he knew who we were, where he was, who the dog was, which the dog, we brought my dad home, put the dog in the bathroom, and the police were bringing him in. Put the dog in the bathroom because even though he didn't jump on people, it would just be, he would be in the way. And he was a large dog. He was a black lab mixed with something, but he was fairly large. He could smell the cancer. So we let the dog out when everything was settled, everybody left. My dad was on the couch. We let the dog out because I said, Dad, like, do you want to see Midnight? He's been looking for you for a month. And my dad's like, yeah, like, because they were inseparable. Midnight comes out, excited, and then he started going around the sofa to see my dad, and then I guess he smelled the illness or something, and he literally, I kid you not, turned right around and went into the kitchen.